But let's take a look at this in John chapter 2, verse 1. It says, the next day there was a wedding celebration in the village of Cana in Galilee. Now, how many of you know this is the first public miracle of Jesus, right? And this is, how many of you have been to a wedding? You know, it's just stuff you do, right? This is like normal every day, or almost every day, every year stuff. You go to weddings. It's what people do. And it's just a normal sort of activity. Jesus' mother was there. And Jesus and his disciples were there also. They were invited to the celebration. So again, this is just something that you do in your community, something that we do in our families, just part of everyday life. It says the wine supply ran out during the festivities, so Jesus' mother told him, they have no more wine. I love this because Mary is playing the role of an intercessor. An intercessor recognizes a need and goes to the source of the one who can meet that need. And so she recognizes the need. Why is she coming and saying this to Jesus? He hasn't performed a miracle yet, at least publicly. She knows the promises of what Gabriel told her and what was prophesied over him. Was she working off that knowledge? We don't know. Maybe she was. Had he, parted his milk in a cereal bowl or, did she do something that's not recorded? It's not recorded in Scripture that had happened, that anything had happened. But what Mary is doing here is so important, is she is setting the atmosphere with expectancy. She's going to the source. She knows Jesus can meet the need, and she's setting the atmosphere with expectancy. Even if it's just with a few, even if it's just a conversation between her and Jesus. Was she possibly going? I mean, Jesus would have been overseeing the family finances at this time. Joseph would have been dead. The eldest son would take over the family, overseeing the family finances. Is that why we don't know. But she's presenting a need that is there, that she's aware of, and she's presenting it. Now, Jesus answers his mother a way I have never answered my mother in my entire life. He says, dear woman. Never, ever, ever did I speak those words to my mom. Dear woman. I mean, who does that, Dear woman. Now, of course, I think this is part of the translation. Of course, that could have happened in there. He says, dear woman. Now, the next words I had said to my mother multitude of times over and over again, that's not my problem. That he does say, dear woman, that's not my problem. He says, that's not our problem. Jesus replied. Now, notice this is an interesting phrase of what he says next. My time has not yet come. Now, Jesus is doing something here. He's indicating that there is something of a dispensation. He's indicating, I know that's dangerous language to use, in a spirit-filled church in the greater DFW area because of what we're up against all the time in this. But he's indicating there is something about a dispensation here. But notice how he responds despite saying that as if there's an indication of a dispensation. Because it's very powerful, I think, to the end of the story. My time has not yet come. So basically, he's saying no. And he's saying there's a higher reason why no. He's leaving that sort of there. But his mother told the servants. Mary is such a classic mom. Tells me I don't answer, so she went to my coach or my teachers. He's going in. And again, she's setting the atmosphere of expectancy. Smith Wigglesworth said the atmosphere of expectancy is the birthing place of the miraculous. Expectancy is key. But his mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. She doesn't argue with him. She doesn't fight with him, but she's pressing in. She's not willing to give up. Do whatever he tells you to do. This is so powerful. Now, Jesus could have looked at the servants and said, hey, take 5. Go on a break. You guys have been working hard. Go take 5 minutes. Go chill. Go, just take 5. Go do that. But I love this because he could have said that. And again, working with, my time has not yet come. Standing nearby were 6 stone water jars used for the Jewish ceremonial washing. Now, I love this because what would happen whenever you would come into a Middle Eastern home is there would be these 6 stone pots. These aren't light. These are heavy. And you would come in and you would start with the first pot. This is me drawing off my Bible college, training. You would come in and you would go to the first pot and you would wash out. Now, there's no pavement. There's no sidewalks. It's dirt everywhere, right? It's a dirty, dirty place. You're dirt. I don't care how rich you are, you got dirt all over you. So you would go and you would cleanse it. You would start at the first pot, then you would go to the second pot, third pot, fourth pot, fifth pot, sixth pot. By the end, the 6th pot was the cleanest water. But the first pots were muddy. They were nasty because people had a lot of dirt on them, right? So they would go through, this was a ceremonial washing they would go through for any sort of celebration or any sort of place when there was something like that of cleansing. And so these pots would have been, again, they're heavy. It goes on to say, listen to this. It says, standing there by 6 stone jars, water jars, used for the Jewish ceremonial washing, each one could hold 20 to 30 gallons. Now, these aren't plastic buckets. These are massive stone jars. So these are big. Jesus told the servants, fill the jars with water. Notice he doesn't say to them, go wash them out and clean them up. These are heavy. It would have been too hard to do. That would have been really heavy to do. Jesus just tells them, just top them off. Have you ever thought about this before? It's very interesting, isn't it? I mean, there would have been silt in these, it would have been muddy, nasty, dirty, filthy water. Jesus doesn't say, go clean them out. You know how much water that would take drawing from a well to do? Just to top them off, on top of it to clean them out? He doesn't tell them to clean it out. He just says, top them off. You see how much more of a miracle this is as a result of that? It's helpful information, isn't it? When the jars had been filled, then he said, now, you got to imagine being these servants. Now, dip some out and take it to the master of the ceremonies. This dirty, and when you pour water in silty, nasty water, it just stirs it all to the top and makes it even worse. Can you imagine these guys? And they fill it to the top, and he says, now, dip some out. It's not wine yet, guys. You see, I think Jesus was taking a risk here. He didn't have any greater advantage than we have, according to Philippians chapter 2, correct? He's not operating in his superhero God powers. So if you have to take a step of faith, so did Jesus. He's not getting a download from the Father. Do you get one every morning? Sometimes, but not regularly. I want more of that on a regular basis. But he's having to step out and take a risk. I love this. So the servants followed as instructed. I think they made the youngest teenager servant do it. I don't think the wiser, in charge servants did it. They were like, hey, get the kid. Get that ladle. Go dip what that crazy Nazarene just said to do. Can you imagine this servant walking over, spilling a little bit, because his hand is shaking, going, I'm either going to get fired or beaten or something, walking over, terrified. Can you imagine? Because it's still not wine yet. You see, it's not only him taking a step of faith, but he's including the servants in the miracle. We're like, Lord, why don't you just do it? And he goes, nope, I want it to be done in your hands. I want it to be done with you taking the risk, because that'll empower you. Don't bypass the risk. Just step out with expectancy. Can you imagine him walking over and going, please, this was not my idea. You know those Nazarenes. They're from the other side of the tracks. That Nazarene right there, he's the carpenter guy who now thinks he's a rabbi. He told me to do this. This was not my idea. Please don't be angry at me. It doesn't say that, but come on. You know what I mean? Now, Jesus doesn't seem to be bound by this thing of dispensation. He's blowing the dispensation up. Because he's saying, hey, I'm the Lord of it. Even despite all the restrictions. Even despite all of the restrictions that would have been there. When the master of the ceremony tasted the water, that was now wine. The miracle doesn't happen until we take the risk. It's not like Jesus walked over to the jars and went, wine. That's not what happened. It's in our activity that the miraculous occurs, but it's got to require us stepping out and taking risk. Guys, you're not going to buy. When he tasted the water that was now wine, I love this. Not knowing where it had come from. Would he have drank it if he knew? I think the answer is pretty simple, no. Though, of course, the servants knew. I love this because Jesus is doing the big reveal to the lowest in the room. He's doing the big reveal to the ones who matter the least in the society. Isn't that just like him? Those servants knew. He called the bridegroom over. And you know the story. A host always serves the best wine first, he said. And then once everyone's had a lot to drink, and you know why, then brings out the lesser good wine. But you have kept the best till now. You see, the beautiful part of this story is that Jesus doesn't just turn water into wine. He turns dirty water into wine. He turns dirty water into the best wine. He turns the most disgusting, nasty water into the finest wine. Isn't that just like him? Isn't that just like him? But it happens in our hands. In our hands. We're not waiting for God to show up. He's waiting for us to step out so that he can show up and do that work. Guys, put this to the test tomorrow. Put this to the test when you go to work on Monday. Put this to the test. Expect God to show up. Set the place. Set the atmosphere with that place of expecting. Expect him to show up. He's wanting to do it through you. He's wanting to do it through you taking the risk. And we're like, God, if you'll just tell me to do it, I'll do it. How many of you know there's not risk if you get a clear word like that? For me, a word of knowledge is kind of like an upgrade. Just going and doing it when you're not sure, when you don't know. Don't wait. I always tell people, people are like, I only do what God tells me to do. I like it when my sons take out the trash and I haven't told them to. Any parents out there? They're just, why? Because when they take it out on their own and I haven't given them instruction to, they just stopped acting like servants and they started acting like heirs. Needing to have a word to go do something is slavery mentality. I mean, it's good to have. I'm not taking away from that. I get them all the time. But doing it just simply because the need is there. Just simply because the need needs to be met. That's when we start acting like heirs. Amen? I don't have like a fancy, nice ending. This is sort of just more like crashing in the side of a mountain and watching it all burn.